Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast Five Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Jennifer Duke.
Hello.
Now, Jen, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast Five, which is the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still keep it to 5 minutes, obviously. It wouldn't be the Fast Five if we didn't, but we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week and the sleepest story, which is one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. We've got the most remarkable story and our favourite story. Let's jump into it with the biggest story of the week. What was it for you?
So for me, it was the official launch of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice referendum. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced the date has been set for October 14. It is a day that will forever be in Australia's history books, no matter which way the vote goes. We now know we have 6 weeks until 17.5 million Australians will need to say yes or no at voting booths. For the voice to be successful, they need a majority of yes votes in overall numbers and a majority of states. So we're going to have a month and a half of high political tension with the coalition largely opposed to changing the constitution. And hundreds of company directors have signed open letters in support of the voice. Businesses big and small are having to consider their role in Australian society, whether they should weigh into this discussion and what contribution they want to make.
Yeah, it is a big, big story. Another big one for me this week was all about Qantas. I suspect Qantas would rather not be the biggest story, but they've had a bit of a shocker. It started out with Alan Joyce, the outgoing CEO, in front of a Senate committee talking about the cost of living, having to explain sky-high airfares when they've just had a $2.5 billion profit. The government and Qantas are both having to kind of defend the government's decision to block Qatar Airways' application to increase flights to and from Australia because the government said that Qantas is a special case and needs to be protected. Then you had customers up in arms over COVID travel credits. And then the big one later in the week when you had the consumer watchdog, the ACCC, going to the federal court to allege false and misleading conduct where Qantas allegedly cancelled 8,000 flights but kept selling tickets on them, sometimes for weeks. This is a big story. It's not going away. And you actually feel a little bit sorry for Vanessa Hudson, who's coming in as the new CEO in November. What a mess for her to clean up.
It's definitely a big story.
Yeah. Now, look, most remarkable, another big Australian company, I think kind of fits into this category. And the question is really, what on earth is going on at Fortescue Metals? One of Australia's big miners. In the space of just 5 days, Fortescue announced its annual results, full year profit of $5.5 billion US. Then the boss of Fortescue's iron ore division quit, mining chief executive Fiona Hick leaving after just 6 months. Then later in the week, you had chief financial officer Christine Morris quitting as well after just 3 months in the job. That means you had 11 senior executives at the miner have quit in the past 3 years. And then on top of all of that, on Friday, Guy Debelle, former RBA deputy governor, announced he's quitting the board of Fortescue Future Industries. This amount of turmoil at one of Australia's leading companies is it's just pretty remarkable, don't you think?
It is pretty remarkable. My most remarkable story of the week was CoreLogic's home value index showing prices increasing 0.8% over August. Now, you might think, so what? But that's actually a re-acceleration in price growth. And at a time when we're hearing about a cost of living crisis, a lack of confidence in the construction industry, big supply initiatives, and most critically, high interest rates. So where was the big housing crunch that we're all hearing about with people coming off of fixed loans and a mortgage cliff? It's pretty astonishing. And we're seeing big numbers as we head into the spring selling season. There are about 2,400 homes scheduled for auction across the capital cities over this weekend alone. Today's the biggest auction day all year so far for Melbourne in terms of homes under the hammer, and Sydney is the second biggest.
Yeah, it is going to be a big spring. What was your sleeper story, the one that's probably going to be a bigger story further down the track?
My sleeper story was Australia Post and its big $200 million full-year loss. This is only the second full-year loss since 1989 for AusPost, which is when it became a self-funded government business enterprise. Parcel and services revenue was holding up at $7.3 billion, but for letters, in 2008, the average Aussie household received 8.5 letters a week. Now they get about 2.2, and in 5 years, it's going to be closer to about 1. AusPost is going to keep on racking up serious losses unless there's major changes, which means the federal government is under pressure to reduce the frequency of letter deliveries and potentially allow the closure of some post offices. This is likely to spark a privatisation debate, a generational fight, and potentially an argument with the union as cutbacks may come should there be reductions in delivery.
Oh, so it's potential for a big Barney. Actually, mine's kind of along the same lines. The gig economy is getting an overhaul. This is my sleeper story. It's been talked about for so long, but now the government is pursuing legislation that would give the Fair Work Commission powers to set minimum standards for gig economy workers, people like kind of food delivery riders, Uber drivers, that kind of thing. But it's apparently going to be quite large. It might actually then include other areas like care workers and things. And this is why it's going to be such a big issue. It'll be looking at kind of base pay and super and insurance, etc. But business doesn't like it. You had the Australian Industry Group slamming it. Then the Business Council of Australia attacking the changes, saying that they're radical. When this heads to Parliament, when the legislation is introduced, I suspect the government is going to have a fairly significant fight on its hands. So I reckon this is a bit of a sleeper story at the moment. What was your favourite story of the week?
So my favourite story of the week was the Teal Independent MPs pushing for tax reform. One of Treasurer Jim Chalmers' aspirations for Australia is to create a new conversation about how to make the most of the opportunities for our future. And so he's been publishing the Intergenerational Report more often to encourage debate. And it has encouraged debate. And over the past week, we've had experts from all sides come together to talk about tax reform. And they want the government to launch a proper review of the tax system to increase GST and to finally take this issue back out of the too hard basket. So 6 Teal MPs who were urging the government to act on wholesale change to the tax system. We also saw ACT Independent Senator David Pocock, Bernie Fraser, Ken Henry, bank economist CEDA, the Grattan Institute, all together calling for the same thing.
Yeah, that is a very serious story, that one. And to be fair, your day job is as economics correspondent for Capital Brief. So, of course, you are going to be keeping an eye on that. I, instead, tend to look to some of the lighter stories, particularly ones coming out of the US, like this one. And I'm talking about Burger King in the US facing a lawsuit because apparently the burgers just don't look quite like they do in the pictures. You've got angry customers saying that the in-store menu boards make the Whopper look 35% larger than it actually does, which is very, very, very specific. But I suppose if you're going to have a class action, you really want to make sure you get those details right. Burger King basically have said that they're not denying that the pictures are different. They say the patties are the same, but they say it doesn't really matter because the burgers don't need to look like the images. Don't really get that. It's all going to court in the US, and I think we'll be watching this one and probably laughing about it from afar.
I think you're probably right.
All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thanks so much, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Don't forget to hit follow and join us online on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.